Welcome to the Tribal Data Toolbox Exercise 15, Importing and Entering AQS Monitor Protocol Data. So this is me and Dan Catlin of the Fort McDowell tribe in the Phoenix area working together on his computer on some horrible AQS thing. You can see here's an AQS file down here, and we're going to go over what this means and how to get your data into AQS format. So, first of all, why is it such a pain to get the data into the AQS format? Well, let's take a look at this format, which is pretty horrible. So what we've got here is that every row in the file that you submit to AQS, and by the way, the Toolbox can produce files in this pipe delimited format ready for uploading into AQS, or the HTML format. Either one AQS will accept, and the Tribal Data Toolbox will produce files in either format. So first of all, let's go over what some of these codes are, because this is it's just very dense and you can't really read a file like this. So first of all, what we're looking at, in every single line, there have to be, in addition to things that you can recognize, like here's the date, 2003, May 14th, the time, 1800, and these are ozone values, and here is an ozone concentration. There are other codes in every single line of code of the data submitted to AQS. Has to be, let's see, here we've got, this is a file that I worked on with Ralph Gomez from the Ak-Chin Indian community, and 612 is the tribal ID for Ak-Chin. 0002 is the site ID number. 44201 is ozone. 1 in this case is POC1. 1 is gathered data every hour, so frequency. 008 are the units, parts per billion. 047 is a code for a Thermo 49 analyzer. And if you had AQS invalidation codes, that code would be here, replacing this parts per billion value. So when you produce an AQS-ready file, it's not just date, time, and the value. In every single line, it has to be all these codes. So that's why it's problematic to produce these files. So now that we've reviewed just a little bit about what are in these files, let's get into our exercise. So we are looking at, I'll bring this over to my desk, and we are looking at exercise 15, and this is fairly detailed, and we have two methods here for entering AQS monitor protocol data. So first of all, it's very common that you already have a site set up in AQS. So this may have been done years ago by a boss, somebody who had your position years ago, or a contractor, if you've ever had a contractor manage your data just for some period of time, or perhaps if you were working with the state or even the county. You may have a file already set up in AQS that established your site with your sampler, and now if you remember, you have to have all of these things still have to be correct. So that's one of the things that you need to make sure. If you're going to download your protocol codes from AQS, make sure that what they have is still what you're operating, because if it's several years ago, it may be that you used to have more samplers or different kinds of samplers. So the exercise has two parts. The first part is to download the protocol codes from AQS, and this is for the PM2.5 filter data from Site 2. And we're just assuming that a former coworker had set it up in previous years and that it's all still relevant. So the SOP for AQS in the toolbox goes over how to go into AQS and generate a file containing the monitor protocol codes. It's relatively straightforward, and the SOP describes with screenshots how to go into AQS and first of all determine if you have a site established, or if anyone has submitted data for you before then, a site will have been established. So the SOP includes how to go into AQS and get this protocol report for your tribe and site. Now in our case, we have one for our demonstration. So this is the tribe that we've been working on throughout the course, and so this is the file that's in the exercise 15 folder that includes the different codes that are established for all the different pollutants. And you can see that we've got 88101 here, which is PM 2.5, measured with a FRM sampler. This code 117 here stands for some of these you'll have memorized soon, your own codes. And RMP 2000 FRM 105 are the units of micrograms per cubic meter, local conditions. 7 means a measurement period of 24 hours. And we've also got the, let's see, no ozone monitored at this site. We've got different MET parameters here. So this file, make.txt, is produced for you, but if you have AQS, anybody's entered AQS data for you or established a site, you will have this in AQS and you'll be able to use this, download it, and then you won't have to enter all these codes yourself. Either way, we're available to help you. So let's go into the actual exercise. So the exercise tells us that we have already downloaded this mk.txt file, and we are to import it into the toolbox and begin with step 7 of the SOP. So we have this make.txt. Now we know that we need to save this in our Tribal Data Toolbox 2.1 folder. So I'm going to save this in my Tribal Data Toolbox folder on my C drive and save. So now I can go into the toolbox. First of all, let me make sure I'm following the directions. So here is the SOP, step 7. It's on page 8. And it says click on the Import Enter AQS Monitor Protocol button, and it shows this picture. Alright, so we can continue on doing this. Import Enter AQS Monitor Protocol data. Okay. Then we see the same form as we see in the SOP, which is great. And we are to import monitor protocol data from AQS. And now this leads us through the import process really in a somewhat parallel way, where we import that mk.txt file that we just saved in our Toolbox 2.1 folder, and it tells us the import was successful, and then we can look at it, and that's the file that we just looked at with the different method codes and different pollutant codes with a hypothetical tribal code and the site ID. So that's good. That's in the toolbox now in a temporary table. Now we have to transfer it to the permanent table. Don't get freaked out by this. This is generally totally perfect because the toolbox guesses it wonderfully. And you don't have to do anything except for click Save and then the lower X. The only thing you have to worry about in that step, if you open this up, set up transfer, and you see anything that begins expression, EXPR, then you know that you need to remove all of these by deleting them, holding down the Shift key, and make sure you scroll way out to the right and delete them and start over. In general, however, I have never seen it where the toolbox has not guessed this correctly, because of course the column headers are exactly the same as the column headers in the make.txt file, as they will be in the file you download from AQS. Save, close. Now the next step, transfer to the permanent, and yes, 22 rows, because we have 22 rows in that mk.txt file. Now let's inspect the permanent table. Here it is. We have all these codes now in our toolbox as a permanent table. Click the lower X and now delete the temporary import table, and now continue to create AQS data files form. That takes us through here. So we check our exercise description and the AQS help file, and we've gone through step 16. We've finished part 1 of the exercise, and part 1 of the exercise is just to import the mk.txt into the toolbox. Now the second part of the exercise is to manually add the codes. So let's assume that no data have been uploaded, ozone data or metadata have been uploaded, and basically AQS doesn't know of your site's existence yet. So now we're going to manually enter monitor protocol data for site 1, which in our toolbox is AQS site ID 1001, and we're going to follow the SOP for the manually add monitor protocol data, and that is, coincidentally, the next section of the SOP. So we carefully read the SOP, and we need to get to this form, import or enter monitor protocol data. So going back into the toolbox, remember we ended on this form, so we don't want to be here. So remember, we can always click on the lower X or the exit form button. So I'm going to click there and take us back to the main switchboard, and now I'm going to import enter AQS monitor protocol data, but at this step, for the first part of the exercise we click this button. The second part of the exercise we're clicking this lower button for manually adding monitor protocol data, and this takes us to this form where we can pick the codes from drop-down lists. So I am going to go back to AQChin, and you can pick your tribal ID, AQS site ID 001, and we're going to select the pollutant. Let's see, for in our exercise we have a description of an ozone monitor, a DICB 1008-AH, and we have a hint. This is an FRM and use method 056, because if you look at this, we'll see, all right, ozone, that's what we're monitoring at the first site, and POC1, that's in the hint also, you use POC1, and now we are going to enter the codes associated with this ozone monitor. It is an FEM. 44201 is the code for ozone, and here you can see we have a lot of different methods to measure ozone. So we know we are looking for a DICB 1008, so let's see if we can find that. Here we go, a DICB 1008 AH. Then we've got reported units in parts per billion, which is 008, and sample duration 1 hour. Now we have to make sure that we add the monitor protocol record and click this button. So we see that it gives us the usual query answer, and we say yes. And we've added that monitor protocol record for the ozone analyzer itself. And now we have to continue on with the exercise and add the protocols for these other codes. So we've got a wind speed monitor, ambient temperature, relative humidity, and precipitation. So we go back into the toolbox and look at wind speed, and for pollutant we select MET, POC1, not an FRM or FEM, and we are looking for wind speed. And we're looking for the scalar wind speed, which is the commonly used wind speed where it's not the direction, it's just the actual speed itself. And then we're looking for the wind speed method. We have to keep scrolling down until we find the method. The Vizsla 425, that's correct. And reported units are miles per hour and at 1 hour intervals, and then add the monitor protocol record button. So we click yes, and now we continue with the other MET parameters. So we can leave this MET, POC1, they're not FRM or FEM, and next we're looking for ambient temperature. So outdoor temperature, that's what we're looking for, and this is with the method, so many methods. The Vizsla 435 ambient temperature sensor, reported units Fahrenheit, and at hourly durations, and we add that record. Now we have to continue on with relative humidity. So we are looking for relative humidity 62201, and it's with a method. The Vizsla is the same sensor for ambient temperature and relative humidity, and the units are percent, let's see, percent relative humidity 019 at hourly durations, and we add this record. Now our next parameter that we're looking for is precipitation. Let's look at the exercise. Yes, now we're looking for a Vizsla 444A tipping bucket. So we're going to look for precipitation here, which is 65102, and we're looking for that tipping bucket 444A. There's our method code 060. Reported units, in this case we are reporting in the old-fashioned of inches and at hourly intervals, and we add this record. And at this point you have completed the data entry part of the assignment. So just to see if you've done it correctly, what you can do is you can click on this button, View Existing Monitor Protocol Records for this site, and this is the manually entered site that we just did. So let's click this button, and this opens up this query window with the codes that you just entered. So you can go through and check this against what's in the exercise description to make sure that you did that part 2 correctly, and close the lower window. And then to check on the first site where we downloaded from AQS, theoretically, the MKtxt file, and then we imported those protocol codes into the toolbox for the site 1 because sometime in the past someone had entered data. So there is a site established in AQS for site 1, so we were able to import that make.txt. So let's just make sure that it went into the toolbox correctly. So change the site ID to 1 and view existing monitor protocol records for this site. Oh, excuse me. Change to 2. View existing monitor protocol records for this site, and we see the 22 records with the different parameters that we saw in the make.txt file. that pertain to all the different parameters that we're monitoring for at this site. So at this point, we can close the toolbox. We are not going to generate actually AQS data files. That's in the final exercise. What we need to do at this point is to close the toolbox according to our exercise. Make sure we make a note in our database logbook, make a copy of the toolbox and save it in your backups folder, and then transmit this toolbox that you just finished to your instructor and jump up and yell, "Yay! We're almost done with this course, only one more exercise."